Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see faces here. I'm Cynthia Luck-Carr, and I am a licensed prayer practitioner for Centers for Spiritual Living. Hello on live streamers as well. So this morning, I don't know if any of you, I know a couple of you witnessed me zooming in here. Of course, divine intervention allowed me to print my things from the center here because I was having printer problems. It's like, what's that about? Everything's going smoothly. What's going on? And then I realized these are just silly little human problems that don't really matter. And so that leads me to my musings of the week. So as we start into this time together, this spiritual community time together, let's go ahead and ground in, and we'll do an invocation, and then I'll share some more about my musings this week. Yes, I am. I'm doing the best I can here. I guess I can, I should do my...
You just tilt it up a little.
You know what I should do is do what you guys do when you get on before stage and do that. Have you ever heard actors and actresses getting ready for presenting? Is that better, Andrea? Yeah. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Go ahead and join me, please, with closing your eyes if you feel comfortable. Ground yourself into your place. Feel the chair and the planet supporting you. And I'm getting messages from the back. Are we good? Okay, we're good. And now feel the presence of the divine flowing through you as you. I know that there is one source of all that is. I recognize that powerful presence here in this room. On my drive here, this beautiful spring morning, and individualizing as each and every one of us. It is from this grace-filled place that I give thanks for Reverend John and our practitioners, for our musicians, our talented guiding musicians, for our past and present leadership council, for our children's teachers, and for all the volunteers who make this center truly a center for spiritual living. I am grateful for this opportunity. I bless it. And together we say, and so it is. Okay, how's my voice? Still working, Andrea? Okay, good. Oh, a little louder. Okay, here we go. So I started this week with a class on Mondays. We're taking a class, some of the practitioners and I are I guess we'd call it auditing a class with Reverend John. It's a new class, and it's called newish class. It's spiritual practices and principles, something like that. And many of you have taken classes probably, and we spend a lot of time writing and thinking and trying to come up with the right words and how to put this down in a paragraph. And the way my life is, apparently Monday I was not going to do that. And I was able... unusually, to distill it into 2 words. So my intention was release and increase. And I thought that was so strange that I was able to get rid of all the flowy words and just get to the point. I distilled it down. And it's not a simmering, which it typically has been in my life. It's, musing and simmering and contemplating, but it really was a revealing of the simplicity of what we are here learning. We are here to learn to release and increase. And I worked with that all week, even including trying to remember it. What was that I said? Just simplifying. So I came to the point that there are different qualities of problems that we have as humans here on this planet. Some are just the basic ones of having problems of, I don't feel good today, this person is bothering me, or I'm afraid that I don't have the love that I need, or I'm afraid I don't have the finances that I need, or I am angry, or the planet is falling apart, or there's conflict somewhere else. Those things are human problems. And when we distill them down, the solutions in the moment are revealed. And I was able to find a paragraph where Ernest agrees with me. Actually, he is the one that showed it to me. So it's in this thing called You, and it's a simple paragraph, and it says, mentally act and think as though the problem were only an argument trying to convince you that you do not know the answer. It is your business to neutralize this argument, taking it apart, thought by thought, until there's nothing left of it, until you reach the realization that dissipates it. So you truly are realizing the peace within you. You're realizing that the problem is just the problem. It is not the truth of who you are and the truth of the divine presence within everything. So that's what I'm bringing to you today. So let's go ahead and remember that restricting problems of thought are ours to release. And when we release, we increase the flow of the divine to solve these problems of being human. Let's go ahead and together say our affirmation for April. It is on your insert in red in the middle. Thank you for listening to me today and helping me muse. Okay, together. I know myself as Spirit knows me, creative, unique, and unlimited. And that printer is going to work perfectly the rest of the week.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, John.
So, I was thinking of an age-old question this week as we are post-Easter, post-Passover. What happens when the dog chasing the car catches the car? Now, actually, that's a question more about humans than it is about dogs. Because the idea is that if you get something that you are seeking and longing for, what happens once you finally get it? Well, I know dogs, they don't think the same way that we do. Everything's amazing. Everything's a good opportunity. There's no better opportunity, there's just an additional opportunity. And as we notice Will the Wonder Dog, when he allows to chase a car that comes in the parking lot, there's another opportunity for someone to love me. And then there's always many of those opportunities. But to look at that saying from our humanness, that when we get what we think we are seeking, what do we do once we catch it? And so it's a little bit of looking at this post-Easter, post-Passover kind of period. So as we've been talking all this last month of those two occurrences, that it is symbolic of our growth, of enlightenment on some degree or level, of attaining a higher spiritual elevation or growth. But what happens when you, in a sense, get there? Then what? And do we ever get there? And how we can hold things out there as if we would only get there, life would be better. And we do that and I think sometimes we have this tendency to build up in our minds what spiritual growth is, or quote unquote enlightenment, or an awakening of some time, or entering the promised land from this story of Passover, that boy, life will be great when? But again, what happens when you get there? Really? And we have all attained probably significant goals in our life. What happened then? Did you suddenly think there's nothing left to do? Or did it open something else that you thought you had to absolutely have? Last week, it does seem like last year, I started sharing a little bit of a story of someone years ago who was on this quest for spiritual enlightenment. And they were going all over the world seeking teachers that they heard about that just have the right technique of meditation or something, or maybe could just like touch you and like, the universe would open up. And And I shared a little bit more on my blog this week, and this person was getting ready to do what was going to be the ultimate trip somewhere in Southeast Asia. I don't even remember where it was or who they were going to see, and this was going to be it. And I remember them saying that, I just need to get her done. Get what done? I need enlightenment. I just need to get her done. And I thought, oh, okay. And I said, well, I wrote in my blog, I says, well, then what? I mean, you'll have all those frequent flyer miles. What are you going to do with them? What happens when you have, like, reached it and attained it, and you're, I don't know, you're healing the sick, walking on water? What happens now? And it was interesting. They said, well, I don't know. I mean, they really, I don't think they'd ever asked that question to themselves. It was like, well, I guess I don't do anything anymore. Well, I don't think I'm an expert on enlightenment, because I wouldn't put myself in that kind of Jesus Buddha category. But something tells me is that it's not a ticket to stop working in your life, or at least participating in your life. But I do think it is, as we grow spiritually, it means that you approach life a little bit differently. And that we stop, on one hand, making these goals out there as the ultimate thing, that my life would be better if I only did, to being more in the present moment. So in a sense, you might say, as you're asking yourself, well, gee, I've never said I need to find enlightenment, or walk on water, or heal the sick, or raise the dead, or anything like that. But we have said things like, my life will be so much better if I only finish college or this training program, or attain a certain amount of finances, or have a certain type of relationships in my mind, in my life. And I remember, gosh, several years ago, some people that I knew, married couple, a man and a woman, they were friends of my parents, and they were kind of laughing at themselves. I think this was like 80s or 90s or something. He says, you know, when we started raising our kids in like 1969 or something, we thought if we could only make $18,000 a year, our life would be perfect. And I mean, well, they eventually did, and then of course there were other things that needed to happen. So part of this seeking to grow in consciousness is to look at quote-unquote goals a little bit differently. That it's not about attaining a certain thing, but it's how you may be approaching life differently as we do grow in consciousness. Because as Ernest Holmes writes, we're in this upward spiral of spiritual consciousness and growth. We're always going around and around and around, and we're always healing a little bit more, changing our outlook a little bit more, and approaching life a little bit differently. And for us not to so much put our emphasis on, if I only had this particular goal. And especially in our spirituality, because I think sometimes we want to take classes here, we want to be good students, and we really want to, and quote-unquote, attain this thing to happen. And I don't know if there really is that thing to accomplish. In fact, I think it has a way of sneaking up on you. And I think if we have this idea that if I only had this, I don't know, enlightenment or whatever it is, that somehow life would open up and would be better, I think just that desire keeps us away from it somehow, if that makes sense. If I say, if you want it too much, be suspicious. Like, anytime someone wants to serve a little bit too anxious for something, I think, why? I mean, what's in that there? So I always ask if we want it too much. And to get away from this kind of lotto mentality of, if I only had the thing, everything would be better. To relaxing a bit and seeing where we are now, looking at the growth that we have, and ask, well, what is, quote unquote, growing in consciousness, or in, enlightenment light? So I found something interesting from Deepak Chopra this week. And it says, there are only two symptoms of enlightenment. The first symptom is that you stop worrying. The second symptom is that you encounter more meaningful coincidences in your life, more synchronicities. And this accelerates to the point where you actually experience the miraculous. So let's take this apart a little bit. So again, we think miraculous, miracles. How do I get there? You don't we? Like, what's the secret formula? Is there a place to get where I have these miracles? This isn't really what he's talking about. It's not like issuing you a magic wand that this, life will be exactly how you think it should be on the human level. So let's talk a little bit about this first. There are only two symptoms of enlightenment. The first symptom is that you stop worrying. So there is a difference between worry and concern. Let's talk about worrying a bit. Worrying is a paralyzing emotion that keeps us stuck exactly where we are. Worrying is a thought that I will never get out of this difficult situation. Worrying can be those 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning times when you wake up and go, oh my God, I will never find a solution to this. And it can be paralyzing. Worry puts you in a state that you can't see a possibility to save your life. So that doesn't mean that we don't have concern. On the other end of the spectrum, there is a belief with some of us that if I was truly spiritual, I wouldn't have anything to be concerned about. That I wouldn't have any challenges. In fact, it's really easy to maybe sometimes when you see someone with a challenge go, what's in their belief system? Why are they having that challenge? If they would only elevate a little bit, they wouldn't have that challenge. So we are in a way of existence where challenges exist. Challenges actually can be a positive thing. They alert us to that healing is needed in a situation. When we watch the news, we should be concerned and know that solutions need to be found. And in that concern, know that every one of us on some level needs to play a part in it. Whether it's in consciousness and in prayer, or asking what are the steps that I need to take in my community, in my family, and even in the world that would help push it into a different direction. So concern opens us up to possibilities. To say, what if? How could a better experience take place? How can we all participate? But to not get stuck, again, in worry. So what do we do then? So we have concerns, we have challenges, and sometimes these challenges are just so convincing that they're impossible to get through. What do you do? Just interesting as a spiritual community. Over a breadth of years, we've had concerns and things that it would be really easy to think or believe that there's no way out of this. Remember when I first came here, the whole drama of purchasing this building and getting through planning and zoning meetings for a year or so, there was kind of the anxiety and of like, this will never happen. Move a few years later on, in the Great Recession, where we were really financially challenged because you were all financially challenged. And it'd be really easy, as I would sit with bookkeeper and the leadership council and say, well, we have financial obligations that are this much, and we have income that's this much. So what do? It's easy to go into worry. Will we make it? Will this be our last chapter as a spiritual community? And then, of course, the last couple of years, which I've talked a great deal about, really wondering, what in the heck should we be doing? What is this all about? And again, there's nothing like for over a year that we did Sunday service with 5 people in this room. Is there anyone out there? Are we making a difference? Should we just kind of like go on hiatus for a while because it seems like nothing's happening here? And there were some nonprofits and faith communities that did close their doors permanently. So again, you could go into that almost fear of, what's going to happen? So here's one thing that I learned, and it's not always easy to do. So when we are in worry or in concern, to ask ourselves, what is it that I'm really supposed to be doing as myself as a person, as us as an organization? And so as I look back at the times that I thought, oh, this is a panic point, I'd look at our mission and vision. I said, well, that's what we're supposed to be doing here. That not that we're not supposed to be concerned and to readjust our financial planning if it was in fact a financial issue, but rather than to make that the thing to think about, to again ask, why are we here? What is it that we are as a group and as a spiritual community supposed to be doing? How are we still a support even if it appears that resources have diminished to a certain extent? During the last 2 years, when we don't see anybody in person, how are we a spiritual community giving support to people? How do we fulfill our mission and vision, even if it's talk about trust? It's like, hello, anybody out there? Is there people out there? And it turns out that there were. You're still out there. But again, readjusting and saying, what are we supposed to do for our mission and vision as a spiritual community, even though it looks like our go-to ways are not available anymore? So the same in our personal lives, that if it seems like we are adrift, or if it seems like we have challenges that we didn't have before, to ask ourselves, yes, those are challenges and concerns and things that we need to attend to, but what at the core is it that I'm supposed to be doing as a person in my life, in my career, as someone in a family? What is it that we're really supposed to be doing? And how is that possibly shifting and changing now, because the world is always shifting and changing? What is different? How can we rise to those differences? And I know all of you have heard stories of people in your life and people not in your life on the news have almost miraculous stories where they just looked at their life differently, kept to their core purpose, but circumstances have changed. So, with that to say, regardless of my concerns, what is it I'm really supposed to do? It has absolutely nothing to do with finances or other resources, really. Resources shift and they change and they come and they go. What is it you're supposed to do? That's how I get through quote unquote worry. The second part of this is that you encounter more meaningful coincidences in your life, more synchronicities. And this accelerates to the point where you actually experience the miraculous. So what does that really mean? Don't we all want this? I want life to be easy. I want it to flow. I just want to bring things into manifestation like this. I just want it to work. I don't want to put in so much effort anymore. Well, what is amazing, sometimes it seems like it does work like that, and other times it seems like we are, swimming against the stream, so to speak. So what is it that we're really looking for in there? First of all, let's just admit up front, there is no perfect life. There's no life without challenges. Challenges do not mean that you are, quote unquote, bad in consciousness. It just means that you are human and reported here on earth for things to do. And for why or how, who knows? We all reported here on duty. But the way that flow begins to happen, meaning that even though you are experiencing what appears to be challenges, is starting with the spiritual principle of just not only being present, but a greater sense of trust. And I know that's really difficult. If you're having something really difficult in your life right now, to say that there is something larger going on in my life can seem kind of, not maybe mean so much. It's easy to talk about trust when things are going well. Like if you've just had something amazing happen and you're in a part of your life that is all just coming together, say, yes, look at what trust did for me. But when you were possibly in a portion of your life that it didn't seem quite so flowing, it's hard to talk about trust at that time. So it can be a challenging spiritual practice to just be where you are and know that even if it doesn't turn out exactly how my human mind would like it to be, that it can still flow to its perfect place. It can even mean that in what I'm experiencing that seems so traumatic, there actually can be the seeds of something better. And to realize if you look back into your life, if your life is anything similar to mine, some of the things that you wanted the most that you didn't get turned out to be the biggest blessing. You're going to say, boy, I sure dodged that bullet. Thank God that didn't happen. Thank God I didn't take that job as you hear what some catastrophe happened to the company or whatever. You go, whew. And just remembering how much possibly even grief you had of not getting that thing. And going, wow, maybe I should trust a little bit more. And again, it's never going to be perfect on the human level. And so even Deepak says it accelerates to the point where you actually experience the miraculous. Again, I don't think we're in walking on water territory. But you can start to see the value of where you are, even if it doesn't seem to be working out in the present moment. You can start to see the longer range of things and how they work. And that the miraculous is simply being exactly where you need to be, doing what you should be doing, whether that is something that seems pleasant or unpleasant. And again, the last 2 years, I think, have been about that a lot. But as we look at this, I think we need to get away, as humans are, from being, quote unquote, goal-oriented, in a sense, that here's the thing that I need to achieve. It's interesting that over the years going to job interviews, and we've all been on a lot of job interviews. And I remember, what are some of the questions they would ask? Where will you be in 5 years? Where will you be in 10 years? And of course, especially as a young adult, he says, well, I have to come up with an answer to that question because they're going to want to know that I'm a go-getter and I have all these goals. And I think if I were to be in a job interview now, of course, I think the older you get, the more honest you can be. I would say, I don't know. I mean, really, who knows what's in 5 years or 10 years, or especially if, like in career-wise, I've really kind of accomplished everything goal-wise that I wanted to. So this idea of almost giving up on goal, not giving up, but to realize that there is just a greater flow that you can be in. And that it is a cycle, that we talk about spiritual development, there's not this ultimate promised land or resurrection moment that we say now that we're done. We're never done. It's always the upward spiral. And actually I was talking to Rabbi Robbie about this week. All of our favorite I can never say that, Rabbi Robbie. Anyways, our favorite Rabbi Robbie, and we had a nice little Zoom meeting together. And of course, we had to talk about fun stuff, but then we got to talking about ministry stuff. And she was talking about in her life as a rabbi, and something that hadn't dawned on me, that there's a point in the year when you turn the Torah back to page 1. That just like for those of us that have been raised Christian, you kind of follow the stories in the New Testament. You start with the birth and you end with the resurrection and some things after that, and then you go back to the beginning again. And she said it is a big moment and for them, it's the first 5 books of what Christianity calls the Bible. For them, the 5 books are the Torah, that throughout the year you go through the stories and lessons of those 5 books, but then it's a moment of that you recognize that you go back to the beginning. And I found this little writing from in the Jewish News from Rabbi Jonathan Jaffe, and he said, "This week's Torah portion constitutes the last portion of the Torah to be read in full on Sabbath morning. We will later conclude our reading of the Torah before turning back to Genesis to start the entire journey again. And yet the story of the Torah never really comes to an end. Think about the full context of our narrative. Genesis gives us the story of the universe and all of humanity before narrowing in on Abraham and his descendants through the settlement of Joseph and his brothers in Egypt. The following 4 books of the Torah aim towards a final resolution of settling the descendants of Abraham into the land of Israel. In fact, all of Deuteronomy constitutes the final speech of Moses as the people are perched outside of the land, of the promised land about to go in. And then, just as the Israelites' dream is about to come to fruition, as the climax of our story is finally within reach, we roll back the scroll and start all over again. The narrative of our weekly readings is never resolved. It is truly the never-ending story. So I like that in the story. Right before going into the promised land, you go back to the first episode. Don't you hate that on Netflix when they don't resolve a series? It's like, oh, they're just about to do the big thing, and then that's the last of the season, and then the next thing you hear, they canceled it. You'll never know the resolution. The only thing that you can do is start all over again and maybe hope that they'll get a resolution the next time you go through the 5 seasons or whatever it is. But I think this is just so wonderful to acknowledge that as human beings we think there is an ultimate resolution. But the thing is, as I was talking to Rabbi Robbie with this cycle of following the 5 books of the Torah, and just getting to the point of the promised line, like, will we make it this time? Did God write a few more lines and say, and they entered? And no, the answer is no. But the thing is, you never go back to where you were the last time you started Genesis. That you start from where you are now at that threshold of the promised land in their reading. And you start at that point and start the journey again. And to realize, as this Rabbi Jaffe said, it is a never-ending story. In fact, the human condition is meant to be a story that never reaches a final conclusion. Maybe there is somewhere in whatever happens after we're here, but that's not part of the program here. So as we have finished Passover season and Easter season, of course we're in the aftermath of it, to realize that whatever intentions you had to metaphorically follow these seasons for growth in your life, that you have reached a certain higher level, different level, had more insights, and in a sense, it's time to start again. And we will reach that ultimate part of the story next year again. And we'll restart again. So we're never done. And that's the way it's supposed to be. You'll always be here for these seats for the rest of your eternity. I mean, no, I don't mean that. But you know what I mean. It's always an upward spiral. And I think we should learn to embrace that rather than resist it. So let's just look within as we conclude today and give great thanks for yet again the return of spring and all the lessons it has to teach us, all the opportunities it metaphorically shows us, and know that we are in this moment perfectly grounded right where we are. We open to greater healing in ourselves and the world. We may have concern, but we know absolutely that there is always a way forward. And for this, we give thanks. We allow ourselves to listen to that voice and presence of Spirit within us that is showing us the way, that there is always a way forward. And so we give thanks for this. And in this thanksgiving, we are truly present. And in our presence, we release this affirmation, this idea, this thought. We release it into the universe, into the heart and mind of spirit. And know that as we affirm and send it off and release our attachment, amazing things and the miraculous are then able to happen. And so it is.